The other day while driving in my car, I caught the show Fresh Air by Terry Gross. She was interviewing journalist James Nestor about his new book, Breathe, the New Science of a Lost Art. Nestor and Gross talked for 40 minutes about the benefits of nose breathing over mouth breathing, about how breath affects anxiety, and why exhaling helps us relax. I learned that we take about 25,000 breaths a day, usually without even thinking about it. But in light of COVID, a respiratory illness that makes it difficult for us to breathe, and in a time that we have to be so careful of our own breath and how it might impact others, I've been thinking a lot about breath. And in light of this week's events, where a Black man, George Floyd, was murdered, his last breath literally kneed out of him, and Christian Cooper breathless as he recorded a white woman falsely accuse him of threatening her life, I have been thinking a lot about breath. And in light of today, Pentecost, a day where the breath of God came in like a rush of a violent wind, when God's Holy Spirit filled the people. The same Spirit, the same breath that God breathed into us to give us life, a breath that took people from different walks of life, from different countries and races and political persuasions, and helped them understand, helped them become community. A community that could then bear witness to the love of God. I have been thinking a lot about breath, about Ruha, about spirit. I don't know about you, but my spirit is drained, listless, scattered and unfocused, grief-stricken. 78 days of physical distancing and quarantining at home, and my spirit is worn out. Over 100,000 deaths in 3 months in the United States. That is half the population of Richmond. So many deaths that it is easy to forget that each one is connected to a human being, a child of God. People with names and mothers and fathers and siblings and children and friends, people we know, like Stuart Shotwell. And my spirit is heartbroken. And those who do not seem to take this pandemic seriously, those gathering in parks and not wearing masks and not caring about their God-given breath and how it impacts others' God-given breath. And my spirit is frustrated. And officers who are supposed to serve and protect, but who take advantage of their privileged position. And my spirit is angry. And I am not alone. Fury and chaos are ripping through our cities across the United States, our own included. Friends, my house backs up against Belvedere, and the last 2 nights have been filled with fire trucks and helicopters and fires and bullets. And it may not make sense to us, but people are angry and demanding justice. And I am exhausted. And I'm curious, how is your spirit? A colleague posted a picture Friday night with the comment, "My non-Christian friends might not know that we celebrate a holiday this Sunday, Pentecost. It's the day Christians remember God's Spirit descending as holy fire and wind to provoke understanding among diverse peoples. Some call it the day Christianity was truly born." This Pentecost is not how we imagined. We usually come together wearing our red, maybe waving streamers, singing our songs of praise, maybe even having birthday cake after worship. The truth is, as I reflect back, I think we've been doing Pentecost light. May I go so far to say that we've been doing Pentecost without any real effort for transformation. But this year with our anxiety high and our depression setting in, with nearly 3 months of isolation, with the Band-Aids covering the deep, deep pain of slavery and redlining and separate but equal and discrimination and racial profiling, to uncover the festering wound, a pustulant lesion of systemic racism, with 100,000 deaths and fires in our streets and in our hearts. We hear the words of Acts of violent winds from heaven and tongues of fire descending, and we can't afford to do Pentecost light anymore. Because the Spirit is moving. The Holy Spirit is showing up. The Spirit is just as present to us now as it was then. And it is unexpected. And it's unexpected because it does not look like the same safe, pretty package of Pentecost light, but a bold and violent wind. And it makes us uneasy, and it might even make us a little scared. And I think we are realizing that the Holy Spirit is powerful. And while I don't think God has caused things like COVID, and I don't think it's okay to break windows and loot businesses, what is happening in our world right now, I think, is an invitation to pay attention and to listen, because God's Spirit is moving. The Spirit is moving our Black brothers and sisters who desperately want and need to be heard. It is moving to help us see that some of our systems, like healthcare, are paying people $7.25 an hour no longer work. The Spirit is moving as we are forced to reprioritize what is really important, like family and relationships. And the Spirit is showing up when some 50-something people coordinate their schedules to show up for an 11 a.m. Zoom worship. And the Spirit is showing up with every mask that we make and every time we wear a mask that proclaims, I care for you. And the Spirit shows up when we release ourselves to our vulnerability and ask for help. And it shows up again when we allow ourselves to receive that help. And the Spirit shows up every time we forgive. And the Spirit shows up when we stand against injustice. And the Spirit shows up when we value lives outside of our own. And the Spirit shows up when we confront racism and prejudice. And the Spirit shows up when we confront our own racism and prejudices. And the Spirit shows up in our prayers. And the Spirit is in the hope that proclaims God is with us. The Holy Spirit shows up each time that we love. God shows up each time we love. Oh, breath of love, please show up now and descend upon us. Revive us. God's love, the breath of life, the Spirit of the living God. God's love nurtures us and reinvigorates us, and it gives us the courage to dream dreams. So if we want a powerful Pentecost, if we want a gush of wind to run through our bodies, if we want to be united as community that is a witness to the living Christ, then we must love. But I want to make sure that we understand we're not talking about a can't we just all get along kind of love. I'm not talking about a privileged loved or a big fluffy puppy dog kind of love or a second grade crush kind of love. I'm not talking about lip service and platitudes. I am talking about the love of God, which is a hard work kind of love. A willingness to be vulnerable, to unpack the past in order to find a healthy way forward. Love. I'm referring to a sticking it out and staying in and working through it love, a love that moves to reconciliation. It's a love of deep listening, not surface listening when you're just trying to think about what you're going to say next. No, deep listening, a sitting in it and sitting with it kind of listening, a love about accepting our faults and transgressions, the kind of love that is painful, the kind of love that forgives, a love that is for everyone, that is inclusive and radical. That first Pentecost was filled with authenticity. There was an authentic openness to God's Spirit. Come, Holy Spirit, come. Pentecost isn't something that just happens. It is something that we work towards. It's an invitation to witness to the Holy Spirit. It's an invitation to take the next breath so that our breaths may be the Spirit that makes the world, a world where everyone can breathe.